Lake Corpus Christi had 6 boat ramps. By October 2025, 5 of them were sitting on dry, cracked earth. The 6th, the last one, was a portable ramp, dragged to wherever a thin strip of water still remained. The lake that once held enough water for 500,000 people was at 9% capacity. The city's backup reservoir, Choke Canyon, was below 8%, both of them. At the same time, no buffer, no fallback. And sitting 8 months earlier, the Corpus Christi City Council had voted to cancel the one infrastructure project that could have fixed it all. A desalination plant, sitting on the Gulf of Mexico, with ocean water stretching to the horizon. They voted it down. What you are about to find out is not a story about drought. It is a story about a vote. The first thing to understand is that this didn't happen overnight. From 2021 to 2026, Lake Corpus Christi lost roughly 80% of its water capacity. Not in a single catastrophic season. Steadily, measurably. Year over year, the waterline dropped and the lake bed expanded, and the boat docks crept further from the water's edge until they weren't near water at all. South Texas rainfall ran at less than 60% of normal as of early 2026, per Texas Observer regional climate data. 5 straight years of record heat, 5 straight years of below-average rainfall. Climate scientists had been projecting exactly this for the region: longer drought cycles, less reliable rainfall, water systems built for a wetter century slowly failing under conditions they were never designed to absorb. The numbers were not hidden. Lake Corpus Christi's levels were tracked publicly, updated regularly, posted online. Kenneth Dees, a water resources expert cited in Houston public media reporting, stated plainly that the city was bracing for demand to exceed supply by summer 2026. The system does not just serve Corpus Christi's 318,000 residents. It serves Alice, Beeville, Mathis, and communities across 7 counties. More than 500,000 people. 2 reservoirs, both below 10%. The scale of the exposure was enormous, and it was visible to anyone who looked. Here is what most people assume when they hear water crisis. The pipes broke, the treatment plant failed, something technical collapsed. That is not what happened in Corpus Christi. The treatment plant still works. The pipes still work. The infrastructure built to process and deliver water is functional. What failed was the supply of raw water flowing into that infrastructure. The lakes that were supposed to fill the system simply stopped being full enough to feed it. Corpus Christi's water system was engineered around 2 reservoirs, Lake Corpus Christi and Choke Canyon, designed and sized for a climate baseline that South Texas no longer has. There is no meaningful groundwater alternative. The regional aquifer is limited, brackish in much of the area, or already allocated. When the lakes go, there is almost nothing to fall back on. By October 2025, Lake Corpus Christi stood at 11.8% capacity. Texas Public Radio and Houston Public Media published photographs. The portable boat ramp at Lake Corpus Christi State Park, the last operational ramp of 6, sat on exposed mud. The park that once drew 100,000 visitors a year had become a monument to the waterline that used to exist. Nick Winkleman, Chief Operating Officer of Corpus Christi Water, told reporters that emergency measures, newly drilled wells, groundwater purchases had bought time, not solved anything. Bought time. Lake Texana, roughly 100 miles away, and the only remaining reservoir with meaningful capacity, stood at 55% full in early 2026 and was projected to fall to around 30% by summer. The backup to the backup was declining on the same trajectory. The infrastructure did not fail. The decision surrounding it did. 40 miles from Corpus Christi, there is a city called Mathis, Texas. Population 4,000. 1 water source, Lake Corpus Christi. No independent supply, no alternative. Whatever Corpus Christi's water system does, Mathis absorbs. In September 2025, Mathis city manager Cedric Davis went on camera with KIII3 News and said it plainly. The lake could fall too low to pump by late December, not run completely dry, just fall below the level where the city's intake could reach it. The practical result is the same. Davis and Mathis Public Works Director Robert Tafola then took reporters to Ramsauer Park. They were not showing off new infrastructure. They were hunting for old wells drilled in the 1950s, abandoned and buried under decades of neglect. One was covered by a picnic table. One sat under a concrete slab. One had been abandoned since the 1970s and was located behind City Hall, hidden behind the building where city business was supposed to happen. The math was brutal. Rehabilitating one of those old wells, $300,000 to $350,000. Drilling a new one, $800,000 to $1 million. Mathis had none of that money sitting available. Davis traveled to Austin to meet personally with State Representative J.M. Lozano, State Senator Chuy Hinojosa, and the Texas Water Development Board to beg for emergency funding. He was the city manager of a town of 4,000 people, standing in front of state legislators, asking for help keeping the taps on for his residents before Christmas. String. The industrial users who would have faced rate increases or new infrastructure cost-sharing obligations under a desalination framework had reasons to resist the project. The council had reasons to listen. The drought created the pressure. The vote created the crisis. The lake had been shrinking for 5 years. The decision to cancel the one infrastructure solution that drought could not undermine was made 8 months before the emergency peaked. The Gulf of Mexico was right there. They chose not to use it. The city knew. That is not an accusation. It is documented. The Texas Observer reported that climate scientists had spent years projecting that South Texas would grow hotter and drier, that water systems engineered for a wetter baseline would eventually face conditions beyond their design tolerance. Those projections did not arrive as a surprise in 2025. They had been part of the regional climate conversation for long enough to have influenced infrastructure planning, had infrastructure planning been the priority. City planning documents as of early 2026 showed that a formal Level 1 water emergency, mandatory cuts across all users, could be declared as early as May 2026. That scenario was not invented in response to the crisis. It was already inside the planning framework. The city was modeling it, which means the city understood the trajectory. The formal emergency was not an unforeseeable event. It was a scheduled outcome on a documented timeline. Nick Winkleman used the phrase "bought time" to describe the emergency drilling and groundwater purchases. That language matters. You only buy time when you know a deadline exists. Corpus Christi Water's own leadership was describing its crisis response as a delay, not a solution. The countdown was not a secret inside the utility. And then there is the desalination plant itself. The project did not appear suddenly in 2024 or 2025. It had been in deliberation long enough for cost estimates to rise from $750 million to $1.3 billion. Years of discussion, years of engineering review, years of cost projections climbing while the reservoirs declined. The council watched both numbers move in opposite directions, the cost rising, the water falling, and chose cancellation. Kenneth Dees stated in 2026 that there was far too little time to dodge the crisis through new infrastructure. He was right, but the reason there was too little time was not that the crisis appeared without warning. It was that the warning appeared and the infrastructure was canceled anyway. Every data point was visible. Every model was filed. The solution existed, was deliberated over for years, was voted down, and then was brought back in panic when it was already too late to matter before the crisis peaked. This is not a failure of information. It is a failure of decision. After the September 2025 cancellation became a national story and the reservoirs kept falling through winter, the city reversed course. The desalination plant proposal came back. A vote on a revived proposal from a new contractor was expected in late May or June 2026, according to Texas Observer and Texas Public Radio, reporting published May 29, 2026. The Inner Harbor desalination proposal, as referenced in Houston public media coverage, would produce up to 10 million gallons of drinking water per day. The earliest it could deliver water, if approved at that May or June vote, was late 2029. Let that land. The crisis was projected to peak in summer 2026 or summer 2027. The fix, if approved immediately, arrives in 2029. The city is voting on a solution that will not produce a single gallon of water before the worst of the shortage has already happened. Meanwhile, the emergency measures continue. Wells being drilled, groundwater purchases being negotiated. Lake Texana, 100 miles away and already declining, is being watched carefully for how much longer it can function as a buffer. Winkleman's phrase, "bought time," is still the most honest description of everything the city is doing right now. Here is the arithmetic that the council apparently did not run in September 2025. The desalination plant was canceled because $1.3 billion was too expensive. The emergency drilling costs money. The emergency groundwater purchases cost money. The mandatory water rationing coming for 500,000 people will damage businesses, agriculture, and quality of life across 7 counties in ways that carry economic costs no one has fully tabulated. And at the end of all of it, the city will almost certainly build the desalination plant anyway, at whatever the 2026 or 2027 cost estimate turns out to be, having already paid for every emergency measure that preceded it. They rejected the bill. They are now paying for the crisis and the bill. The grassroots response was visible by April 2026. Petitions circulating online. The Lake Corpus Christi TikTok community documenting the retreating shoreline and explicitly calling out industrial water users, including incoming AI data centers, as compounding threats. The public understood the situation. The question being asked publicly was the same one that should have been asked inside the council chamber in September 2025. Who exactly was protected by that vote? Isabella Riza went to Lake Corpus Christi in March 2026. She had been there before. She knew the lake. And standing at the new shoreline, the one created by years of drought and years of delayed decisions, she told CNN she could scarcely believe water had ever been there. That is the image this story keeps returning to. Not a broken pipe, not a failed treatment plant, not a contamination event. Just a woman standing where a lake used to be, trying to recognize something she had known her whole life. The physical collapse of Lake Corpus Christi was not a natural disaster. Drought contributed. But what turned a drought into a crisis was a system of decisions. A desalination plant discussed for years and canceled 8 months before the emergency. Industrial water contracts that kept drawing from reservoirs already in visible decline. A planning culture that modeled the emergency, filed the projections, and still chose cancellation over commitment. Alice, Beeville, and Mathis are still wholesale customers of the same failing system. Cedric Davis still manages a city of 4,000 people with no independent water supply, entirely dependent on decisions made 40 miles away by a council that voted no and then scrambled to explain why. The Texas Observer framed it clearly. The Corpus Christi crisis is not exceptional. It is early. South Texas is the leading edge. Other cities built on the same infrastructure assumptions, the same reservoir-dependent systems, the same relationship between industrial demand and municipal supply, are behind Corpus Christi on the same trajectory. The models that forecast what happened to Corpus Christi also contain projections for what comes next. The data is filed. The timeline is visible. The question is whether the next city watches what happened here and builds the desalination plant before the reservoir hits 9%. Corpus Christi did not run out of water because the rain stopped. It ran out of water because the vote was easier than the bill. And now the bill is due anyway, with interest and no water, and a fix that arrives, if everything goes right, sometime in 2029.